Find a mentor, someone where you can just step out of your own family and see how they parent and see how they do life. And you become an adult and you realize, oh, what was normal to me is actually not normal. But I think if I would have seen things earlier, I would have made those changes earlier on.
How's it going, Tim?
Good,
Hey,
good.
Thanks for joining me in the barbershop.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I've met Tim at church, and we've been kind of friends for a bit. We met playing some percussions for a special service. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, Tim, it's the first time I get to cut your hair. So what kind of haircut are you going for?
Yeah, so I have some pictures.
Yeah, let's see them.
Cool. So this is like the original, like what I usually kind of go for.
Okay.
I like curly on top.
Yeah.
So cutting, like, it's really long, but I like to keep the curls. Kind of like that. So like the side, it parts right here.
Yeah. Do you like that part cut in, or just like a hard part, or just a regular? You just like to part it, comb it.
What do you mean a hard cut?
So you can either like comb it and you, with a razor, kind of cut the part in like a hard part.
Oh,
or just,
no, it doesn't need to be hard.
just a normal part.
Yeah, so this is kind of like my, what it looks like on my hair.
Yeah. Do you like it all the way down to skin? I saw some of them are skin.
No, I usually do, what is it, like 0.5?
Yeah, like a half guard. Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Down to stubble on the sides. And I'm kind of picturing just kind of a drop fade like this, kind of coming down a little bit in the back.
Yeah.
And then you usually, like you said, just get it wet a little bit. Usually we'll kind of part it that way.
Yeah, I part it this way and I scrunch it when I style it.
Sounds good.
So
do you want a bit of length off the top? Or
yeah,
like
I think so.
Yeah?
Yeah, I feel like it's more manageable.
Yeah. Sounds good.
But like there's a certain length where if it's too short and like there are no curls, you know? So like I never know what length that is, but
gotcha. Yeah, so enough to keep the curls, but just make it a little more manageable than it is right now.
Yeah.
Sweet. Sounds good. So Tim, it's like I said, it's great to have you in the shop. Tim, you were originally born in Brazil, which is super fun. You were telling me a little bit before that you moved here when you were 5, right? Yeah. That's pretty cool in general, like, because for me, I was born here. I don't have too much, heritage outside of, my parents aren't even from this area. So I have like family in Georgia and New York. So it's like, cool.
Where were you born?
I was born actually in Allentown. I lived the first year of my life there, and then moved around to the.
Well, my wife Melinda too. She was born in Allentown.
Oh, nice.
So very cool.
And you're not a new father, but a father to a new baby.
Yes.
Which is super cool.
He's 2 weeks today. So
fresh.
Very fresh.
Fresh baby. Got that fresh scent.
Yes.
And everything going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tim, you've done a lot of different things in your life, which is super cool. Just tell us like an overview of some of the timeline of what you've done, even career-wise. And
yeah. So I grew up as a pastor's kid and always grew up in like a smaller church. So I ended up learning a lot of things. So, kind of, my dad would just be like, hey, we need a website. Tim, figure it out. So learn how to like build websites, and I have a very musical family. Grew up listening to my parents record albums and everything. So like really got into music right away. And film as well. I remember being handed a Handycam growing up and just fell in love with it and started just making like short films with friends. And by the time I was like 12 years old, I filmed my first wedding. And so that kind of started a business that my wife and I still own today. We don't do weddings anymore, but we stopped shooting weddings not too long ago. But we still do some projects here and there. So we're really into film and working with that.
That's awesome.
And music-wise, just my whole life, really, like growing up with two of my really close friends, Mike and Junior, they're twins.
Cool.
We got together and started like a hip hop group.
Nice.
And so we even recorded like a short album and
What was your part of that?
rapping, singing,
So you
writing
all
music.
kind of did it all.
Yeah, we all just did it together.
That's super fun.
And I mainly did the beats in terms of the composition and things like that. They just helped, writing their own raps and things like that. And so we would perform in different places and events. And when they went off to college, I was like, oh well, I guess we can't do this anymore. So I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna do this on my own. And so I started doing my own thing and recording an album and did a lot of performing in different places at like youth retreats and things like that. And had a really good time doing that. And then from there it just went, God called me into ministry and I went to school for it and then I started my own church. And I mean, I'm really fast forwarding here.
Yeah. We'll come back to some stuff.
I started a church in Bethlehem and did that since 2013. And then in 2021, we transitioned over to Faith Church, and I've been there ever since. So that's the fast track of my life. So I guess the music, film, and ministry.
No, that's pretty awesome.
My three things.
Yeah. And what would you say was one of those things that you felt like? Did you feel in any of those moments like this is what I'm gonna do forever? Like, did you ever have that kind of thing, or were you always kind of like, this is fun, we'll see how it goes?
Yeah, I feel like when I was really into film, I got really into it when I was young. And when I say young, I was probably like 15, 16.
Yeah.
Where I wrote like a screenplay and I had like people come out and do like auditions for it.
Oh, dang. That's
and,
awesome.
It was all set up for me to do this whole like feature film with like no budget at all.
Wow.
And, but it just didn't work out. It was just, for some reason, it was just like so much work and it didn't work out. Like we filmed several scenes, but just because it wasn't a paid thing, I couldn't pay anyone.
Yeah.
It was hard to rely on people to show up.
For sure. Yep.
So that didn't work out, but I really thought like I'm gonna be, a film director and produce really good Christian films that people will enjoy watching. And I really wanted to do that for a while. But it wasn't until God called me into ministry. I was probably around 17 where I really had an experience with him. And then on I knew like I can still have fun with film, but this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I never doubted after that time, after the calling happened.
Yeah. Explain what that kind of like, because I know for me, I've started a bunch of different things as well. Like I started out when I was a kid. I was a child actor at this theater called Sight and Sound Theaters in Lancaster County.
Right.
And I thought for sure I'm gonna be an actor, And then when I got older, I was in Votech for plumbing as a backup plan. And then I think a little bit through that schooling, I was like, I don't know if this is really for me, but I'm going to finish it up, Got my license, but then partway through that.
Oh, nice.
I was...
well, now I know. If I need help, I'll just call you.
And then, so then partway through that, I started cutting hair as a hobby. And then, then ended up going to barber school and started cutting hair. But then, recently started this kind of like video thing, podcast thing, as a side project. Still have the barbershop full time, obviously. And all that kind of stuff. But for me, I never felt like a calling, like you're gonna do this, like this is your thing forever. And I think some people do. Yeah. I think some people, I think all of us were called in the Christian context, like, but even in general, like we're all made for something.
Yeah.
We're all like God creates us for a purpose and creates us to with specific, unique abilities and things like that.
Yeah.
And I think that we all have the ability to kind of mine that out of our life and kind of find those things that make us feel like alive and make us feel like we're able to give back to people in a certain way.
Yep.
But what was it for you that you're like, man, I got to do this ministry thing?
Yeah, it was, and I'm not very, like, just for you to know where I come from, like, I'm very skeptical when people say, oh, God spoke to me.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, like, like how so, so like, and skeptical because there are a lot of people who just say like any little thing, like, oh, that was God. It's like, I'm very careful about saying things like that. Sometimes I'll just say like, hey, I think this was God. It could have just been my intuition, but here's what I'm feeling, and I think I need to tell you this. Yeah. Right?
For sure. Yeah. That butterfly landing on your nose could have been a butterfly landing on your nose. And that could have been all that it was.
However, I remember, around like 16, 17 years old, I remember just like reading the Bible in my room, and I just felt, I don't know, I felt like just God's presence in my room in a way that I never felt before. And I felt very humble and almost like who am I? And I felt my own sin. It's so hard to explain.
Yeah. It's a really personal encounter.
Yeah. And I was trying to pray. I'm like, trying to pray, and I just felt God telling me like, shut up, because I want to tell you something. Yeah. And so I'm like, all right. And so I just felt in my heart, it wasn't like I heard his voice or anything, but I just felt in my heart that he was saying, Tim, I'm calling you to be a pastor during a time that's going to be very difficult. And I'm calling you to preach against false doctrine.
There's someone who's not versed in Christianity doctrine, just meaning like kind of the teachings of the gospel or teachings of Jesus. Teachings of Jesus.
And I still don't really even know what that looks like in my life right now. Yeah. But I've always been very into apologetics, and which is pretty much defending the faith and defending what the Bible says to be true. I've always been into that and getting into debates and everything. So like, I think part of that is just who I am, but what God's called me to do. But yeah, I feel like everything else that I've tried to pursue, like with music, I really thought like, oh, I'm gonna go touring, and had an opportunity to send my demo out to like a record label, and just always felt like, don't do it. And I don't know why, but looking back, I feel like it was because God was saving me for ministry. Yeah. So till this day, I'm like, I never doubted that this was what I was meant to do.
Yeah. No, and that's pretty cool. Like, I think there's something to be said about like when there's something that like you could do, but you choose not to do it. Yeah. That you can tell it kind of means something, but it also, I think it's interesting how sometimes God will like save save us from pride so that our character can grow. And I've seen it in different places where I've been like, God, why doesn't this happen? Why didn't this thing, It seems like it was really important, like for me to hear, really important for me to kind of move towards, but now it's not working. I thought I was really supposed to make these podcast videos before, and it just didn't work until like way later in life. But my character was not where it needed to be a bunch of years ago. Yeah. And so it's cool to see like where God's like, hey, I got you here for now. But
and you always think you're done. And then I look back at my life 5 years ago, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I've grown so much, and just being at Faith Church for the last 2 years, I've seen so much difference in my life as a husband, as just a pastor in general, but just as a person, just as a man. how much I've grown. And so like it's really interesting how you're never done, right? You've never accomplished. There's always room to grow. And I think pride gets in the way of that. Pride tells us, oh, I'm done. I can't learn anything else. I know all there is to know. And it's like, no, there's a lot for us to know.
Yeah. And you grew up with a couple siblings. I know for me, I'm one of four. Would you say that, like, were all of you guys kind of into similar things, or were you in totally different, like we all pretty creative and that kind of stuff, or what kind of avenues did they go?
Yeah, so we all kind of just dove into music. My sister, the middle child, Lo, she did a lot of performing with me.
Fun.
When I kind of went solo. But yeah, we all kind of pursued different things. My oldest sister got married very early. I think she was like 19, so she kind of dove into that and very early on. Lo, she actually went to school for salon, like, hair cutting and stuff.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, but she just never really pursued that. But she enjoyed it, and so yeah, we all kind of did our own thing.
Yeah.
But we were all
very creative people.
and very like in the ministry, like all of our lives.
Okay.
And we still are. And so it's really cool to see how it all comes together.
Yeah, and it's kind of neat how, like, I always think it's interesting how siblings kind of can influence each other in positive ways, but also like how it can really help you develop into your own thing. Just having each other's back, and your sister helping you out in that kind of area.
Oh, and video too. Like I really was into video, as I mentioned earlier, and film and just doing that. And so my sister Lo, she really got into that too. And she was more into it before, but now she still does that once in a while and makes like little shorts and TikTok videos and funny things. And so it's interesting to see like how she takes it and uses it for something different than I do.
And something that I think is also neat is in different stages of your journey, you've learned a ton of totally different things. Would you say that, or how would you say that using what you've learned before, how would you say that impacts now what you're doing, even if in a totally different field than doing music or full-time, or doing video work full-time, or doing any of these things, kind of pursuing those as a full-time thing? How would you say that those kind of impact what you do now?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, so I started as small groups director at Faith Church, but because of my love for technology and video, I always found ways to leverage video and technology to do what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so a lot of coaching, a lot of training, and developing leaders and things like that. But I would do things like when someone asked me for prayer, instead of just texting them, okay, I'll pray for you, I would send them a video of me praying.
Nice.
And
it just felt more personal, I'm sure.
Yeah. And so it just came naturally. Not everyone's like, oh, I'm going to send you a video of me praying. But to me, it was just kind of like, oh, I'll do this. That way they can play it back and it's actually me praying.
And you have that resource.
And also, and part of that is also, what I've done before in the past is, okay, I'll pray for you, and then I don't pray, and I feel horrible for not praying.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to send them a prayer. That way I know I prayed.
Yeah.
And so I started doing that, and that really helped transition me to online director, because now most of what I do is video based. And so a lot of what I do now is video based, and what it's going to become will be video based. So my experience with video production will really help me to do what I do right now. So I'm really excited about that.
That is really cool. And also some things that's kind of funny is like, you couldn't have even imagined what you're doing now because it wasn't something.
No. Yeah. Yep. I had a little taste of it during COVID.
Uh-huh.
when I was leading the church plant during COVID, I would literally have church services in my living room with the camera. And so I would have to do that, and it was so depressing and sad.
Yeah.
But it gave me experience. So it's interesting how God works, because it gave me the experience of it. And so, going into it, this new role is kind of like, it's new, but I've had experience with it before. So yeah.
Yeah,
It's
and you
interesting.
grew up as a pastor's kid, and now you're pastoring as well, and on the teaching staff as well, right?
Yeah.
Which I always love, Tim, how you bring imagery into your messages. And you were telling me the other day at church a little bit about what kind of inspires some of those stories. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I would have to give credit to my wife for sure.
Yeah.
She has, I don't know, she has a really good brain when it comes to like memories and so I'll just ask her like, hey, I need like, when I start every sermon, I'm like, hey, I need a story about comfort or about faith or a time when we try to do something and we keep failing, but we keep trying. Like anything like that, very vague sometimes.
Yeah.
And almost immediately she'll have like a story from like the past that will be perfect.
That's so fun.
And so, so a lot of the times I'll go to her for more of those personal stories, but I always felt like the sermons that I've listened to that impacted me the most were the ones where they made me laugh, or I really resonated with the story they told. And Jesus was a storyteller, so he spoke in parables. So I always try to capture people's attention with storytelling, and then transition over to speaking truth, and hopefully that will, in their own minds and hearts, that'll build a bridge. They'll be able to cross over it, and it'll make sense. It'll make more sense than if I just went right into, this is what the Bible says,
Yeah. So Tim, what is this length kind of looking on top for you?
I think that's really good. This right here, I usually have it like pretty short.
Okay.
But I feel like this grows so fast, and like
Gotcha. So
in
you don't
like
like that
2 weeks
heaviness
it'll be
there.
like
Okay. So
Yeah.
I'll take that down a little bit at the sides there. And Tim, we're kind of coming towards the close of the haircut, and I would love to hear. Kind of been asking this question: is what advice would you kind of give your 14-year-old self? When you're looking back at where you are now and where you've come, what kind of advice would you give?
Okay, maybe two things. I think I would say find a mentor. Where not just like, hey, let's go get some coffee and talk about life, but like someone where you can just step out of your own family and see how they parent and see how they do life and see what, how they live their life. 'Cause I think sometimes when you just experience your own family, you kind of think it's the norm, and then you become an adult and you realize, oh, what was normal to me is actually not normal.
Yeah.
And it took me to get married to realize that, oh, there's some things I need to work on in myself, that a lot of baggage that I brought into my marriage that I need to work on and still am working on right now. But I think if I would have seen things earlier, I would have made those changes earlier on. So but I would always tell my 14-year-old self to just, when making plans and looking at the future and what I want to do and what I think I should do, just enjoy the moment and learn whatever you're doing. Like don't always think of the future like it's indefinite. Like, okay, I'm definitely going to be doing film, definitely going to be doing music, because all that did not work. What I'm doing right now is definitely not, like, even with church planting, I thought I was gonna die in the same church plant, and I had all these dreams, and they were good dreams, they were great dreams, but God had other plans, and sometimes he will take us through different things. Like I think he used a church plant to prepare me for what I'm going through now.
Yeah.
And so just hold those plans loosely.
Yeah.
And just kind of lean into life and learn new things. Like, you know, you with the plumbing thing, like you're not doing that now, but like that's an awesome experience that you had, and all the other things that you learned with theater. And you may not be doing theater now, but like you're on stage now, you know, like you're still somewhat doing something similar. So like we use all of what we learn for everything. And so like I wish I knew some plumbing because I need help in that area, you know? And so like everything that I know in terms of like music and film, like I try my best to use it for my life now. And so I would tell my 14-year-old self, just like learn as much as possible, you know, and just enjoy life, enjoy it, and just hold your plans loosely and allow God to guide you through it.
I love that. Yeah, a lot of people, they kind of regret some things they did as far as like, oh, I wish I would have spent more time on this instead of that. But it's like, the way I kind of think of it is learn it, but don't, like what you said, learn it, but don't hold it too tightly. I think that's such a good word.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Tim.
Yeah. Yeah, because, you know, I feel like I have all these cameras in my house, and I'm like, what do I do? Like, do I keep going? Like, what do I do? But like, I can take shots of my kids, and they come out so much nicer than a phone would. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, I'm still using my gifts, and you know, I'll do some projects here and there. But yeah, it's really cool to have that experience.
That's super fun. Hey, thanks for coming on here, Tim.
Yeah.
Let's check out the haircut.